Last month, I took a trip to Alabama to Petals from the Past Nursery, and they had a fall garden festival where I was asked to give a demonstration on making sauerkraut. My friend Nicole over at Hidden Oaks Homestead was amazing, and she was able to film it for me, and so I figured I would go ahead and share it with you guys. One little side note with it is there was what I can only imagine a fan going in the background, so there's a bit of clicking. I hope you guys will bear with that clicking and enjoy the demonstration.
Well, I want to give you just a little bit of background before we jump into Anna's program. Our nursery is of course Petals from the Past, and we are focused here on an educational approach to gardening. And we're trying to achieve that goal through two primary efforts. Over the last 30 years, we're trying to plant things that you can see. One of the things we like to do is we want for you to be able to see these figs or these apples or these Asian pears or these old garden roses in the landscape when they're 25, 30 years old, so that you can decide whether you like them or you don't. But you also can see how big they get, so you don't make the mistake like I have of planting it too close to the house, right? So if you can see it and see it down the road, that helps you to make a better decision on the location. And then the second effort at achieving an educational goal is we like to host workshops and classes like we're having today, like Anna's presenting, where we can benefit from the information, we can all learn something. I was excited when I started reading about Anna with Fermented Homestead, that I was kind of interested that she got interested and liked the taste of sauerkraut at an early age. That's not, I don't think that's as common in sour pickles, right? Yeah. So all those flavors, but if you read a little bit about Anna, and by the way, they do have, thankfully, a booth set up here at Fermented Homestead. Anna, are you on the main route? Or
yeah, just like kind of right at the entrance. Like if you just go straight, you'll see it.
That's perfect. That's perfect. And so one of the things that we've learned is that, like Anna, if you've experienced a health issue or something like that, you start looking at the gut and start trying to figure it out. And as we were discussing a little while ago, fermentation, I had no idea and how important and how big that is. And so we're excited that Anna's been willing to share her time and her expertise with us and help us learn a little bit about managing that, but also want to check her out on Fermented Homestead. And so I'm going to be quiet, Anna. I'm going to turn it over to you. We'll get some batteries in there, and we'll get you glare. All right, thank you.
Awesome, thank you. My gut issues, a lot of health issues. I was, 300 pounds. I was just an absolute mess. Still got a long ways to go in my health is definitely a long journey. It's not necessarily a destination. But as a kid, we loved sauerkraut and pickles. My sister and I, anytime we went over to our family's house, like to stay for the summer or stay for vacations or something, they always stocked the fridge with pickles because they knew we liked them and nobody else did. So that's kind of where it all began. And then I learned like through Sandor Cats and just all kinds of other sources, YouTubers, books, all those sorts of things, just the incredible health benefits behind fermenting your food. And when I first got into fermentation, I was beyond terrified of it. So if any of you guys are new to it, actually, how many of you guys have never fermented anything before? Quite a few of you, that's cool. Got a couple, okay. One thing that you should definitely know, the big one that holds a lot of people back from fermenting is botulism. Everybody's like, oh my gosh, I'm gonna get botulism, I'm gonna kill myself, I'm gonna kill my whole family. However, I did the research, because I'm kind of a nerd like that, and I went to the CDC website, just for anybody who wants to have a little bit of calm mind for yourself, or maybe for other people. There have only ever been, in the history of the CDC information available online, there have been 2 cases of botulism that have been associated with fermented foods. And it doesn't actually say it was fermented. I'm just going to assume it was fermented. It was from a batch of kimchi back in like the early 2000s. I don't remember the exact year, but it was 2 cases from the same one. And if anybody knows about kimchi, it is made with shrimp paste and fish sauce. So, I mean, let's be real, it probably wasn't from the cabbage, So if you guys just take it easy, take it safe, use all your senses, you're gonna know if anything's gone wrong and you just don't consume it. But botulism in particular is not anything that you guys need to be afraid. Am I talking loud enough? I should say that. Oh, you got it. We're all still hearing me? We're all good? Awesome. Where was it? Botulism. That's right, yes. So botulism in particular is, it's basically not something you ever have to be concerned about when it comes to fermentation. And the reason for that is that it's the natural process of the fermentation is the exact opposite of an environment that botulism can survive in. The saltiness, the acidity, and the airless environment, well, the airless environment is not quite as important for botulism, but the salty and the acidic environment, they cannot survive it. Anything under, I want to say it's a 4 point, the technical one is like a 4.8 pH, but everybody tries to say keep it under 4.6, and it's impossible for botulism to survive. You know, and that also includes all the other ones, but they use botulism as kind of like a marker because it's the most difficult one, it's the most dangerous one. So if you've created conditions that botulism can't survive in, none of the other stuff can survive either. And you can take tainted vegetables, ones that have like, you know, the animal feces, one that have like the salmonella, the E. coli, you can ferment it if you create a proper environment for it. I don't recommend it. So you can do it, and they do it in science labs and stuff like that, and it gets rid of it. It's just gone. So please don't let fear of getting sick or sickening your family stop you from fermenting, because it's actually the safest way that you can consume vegetables. Safer than canning. It's safer than gas station nacho cheese. Like, I've done stuff. Don't let that be a behavior. So I think we're going to go ahead and get started because we only have half an hour. So if anybody can give me like maybe like a 10-minute ticker warning.
I'll give you a 5-minute warning.
5-minute warning. So we're going to take the second part of the cabbage, and when you're first starting to do it, you want to set aside a couple of the outer leaves. We're going to save these guys for later at the end. We're going to top everything off with it. And if you forget, it's not the end of the world. You can just, you know, use like an onion peel or something, not the peel, but just take a layer of an onion and it'll suffice just fine. So we're going to pretend we already cut this thing in half, right? And then we're going to cut it again. So you're going to want to get it into quarters, right? And this part is your choice. If you guys like the core, if you want lots of fiber in there, I am allergic to fiber. I try to, not really, but I basically am. I have SIBO, and so it doesn't work well with fiber. So I usually cut it out, and which is another reason that you can ferment. If you do have issues digesting vegetables, it breaks down the fiber, makes it easier to digest, and inoculates your digestive system with what you need to ferment later vegetables, or to digest properly later vegetables. So in this part, we're going to cut off the core. If you want to keep it and you want to include it, which will help you get a better fermentation because fiber is also another source of fuel for the bacteria, just dice it up in teeny itty bitty little pieces. You don't want to cut it the same size as we're going to cut these. So the nice part about making this at home, most sauerkrauts that you guys buy in the store, they're going to be tiny itty bitty little shreds. Good luck getting anything that's not pasteurized, because even the big names that say they're not pasteurized, oh, they do it, they pasteurize. So I like to cut them in nice big shreds. You can cut them itty bitty, you can cut them big, you can cut them medium. Whatever your Goldilocks is, just do that. So for me, if anybody can see it, this is kind of ideal for me, and this is usually what I cut them at for my sales. Because I make food that I like, and other people seem to like it, so I sell it to them. So that's kind of my motto. If I don't like it, I'm not going to sell it. So you just kind of cut it up. Anything that's kind of thick and tough and fibrous, just cut it a little smaller. If you want to. You definitely don't have to. And then we're going to put it in a bowl. And we're going to do that one twice. This is just cabbage cutting nonsense. It doesn't really matter. But I flip it over, because if I don't flip it over, then I just end up getting like giant sheets of cabbage. So like about a third of the way through, I just flip it over and I get nice bits. So you can see, after I show you, this is kind of about half of a pretty small cabbage. You just kind of put it in the bowl. And then this is where you can get technical, or this is where you can be like me. And usually 2 tablespoons of salt, usually. Start with 1, but it usually takes about 2 for a medium-sized head of cabbage to get it to the saltiness that you need. You want to get to, there's a range that you can go. It's usually between 2% to 5% by weight. But you don't have to get that technical, certainly not in the beginning. Like, I don't want to overwhelm everybody with like, you have to do this and you have to do that. It's not true. It's so easy, it's so simple. I'm sorry, but they've been doing this for like, since the Great Wall of China was built. Like, y'all don't need to get a scale out and be exact and precise. I am exact and precise because I want a consistent product. When I'm selling it to people, I want it to taste it just right. And you know, I just don't want to have any issues, because if you put too little salt, theoretically you could be at risk for forming stuff, but you're gonna see it, you're gonna smell it, you're gonna know that something funky is in there. And we just don't wanna waste the vegetables. If you put too much salt, it's just gonna be nasty. So, you know, there's a range between 2% and 2.5% by weight for vegetable fermentation. Other forms of fermentation take different amounts of salt, like miso. Oh, there's a lot of salt in miso. So, what we're aiming for, if we're gonna salt it by eye, because I traveled from Missouri and I forgot my scale, so we're gonna do this by eye, and I also don't have any tablespoons. So we're just gonna give it a nice, you know, roughly like 1/2 to 3/4 of a tablespoon of salt, right? And then we're just gonna kind of massage it in, mix it all up. Clean hands. I did wash my hands a couple minutes ago. But you know, you want to be clean, but you don't have to be insane about it. Like if you're canning, like you really have to be super clean, because your goal with canning is to kill everything. You're going to preserve the food that you're throwing in the jar with heat and just to obliterate everything, including the food. So with this, we're preserving food with life. We're trying to culture all these bacterias. You know, if you're germaphobe, this is where it needs to end, because you want the bacteria. I mean, you don't want any like nasty stuff in there. You want to give it as good a chance as possible. So you know, you want to start with clean hands. Never use any antibacterial ferment. So at this point, you're just going to take a piece of it, right? You're just going to taste it. Does it taste like the saltiness of a lightly salted potato chip? No. Just a little bit more, and then you're going to mix it in until you get to the lightly salted potato chip. That's really all you're aiming for. And then if you do want to get precise and you want to get exact, you can weigh this with your little kitchen scale. All you're going to do, I want to make sure you give you the tools to succeed in whatever level your comfort is, but you're just going to, like, you'll put the empty bowl on your scale, do the tare button so it says 0, put your cabbage in there, right? You're going to weigh it in grams. You can weigh it in pounds if you want, but good luck with the conversion, okay? Grams is really easy. So say this is 1,000 grams of cabbage, right? Move the decimal place over 2 points. That gives you 10. Double it. That's 2%. It's the easiest way to do it in the world. If you weigh in grams. I can't even begin to tell you how to do it in ounces and pounds and no. So that's all you're going to do. And then I don't know if you guys can see, but can you see kind of the sheen that's on it? That's when you know that you've massaged it enough, because the salt penetrates through the pectins and the cell walls and begins to extract the liquid. And that's going to be the brine that's going to go on top. So you just need to start the process, and then we're going to cover this, like, you know, you saw me have it kind of covered. Ideally, you're going to put like a kitchen cloth or something, but we're on the road, so we get a grocery bag. And then we're going to set that aside for a few hours. Later on, we'll come back and pack it in the jar, which is what we're just about to do here. So thankfully, a couple hours ago, I did this whole process. Ooh, it is warm. All right, and so let's see if I can get you guys to see on camera. You can see it's just got all this brine, and that's what's going to cover it. If in the end, if you don't have enough, like the way that you kind of want to pick out, sorry, I have ADHD, so I'm like all over the place, but the way that you want to pick out a cabbage is when you lift it up, does it feel heavy for its size? It doesn't matter if it's small or big, but like, can you look at this cabbage and be like, yeah, that feels nice and solid. That means it's fresh. That means it's got enough liquid to cover. If you don't have that available to you, don't stress about it. You can add the brine later. But you want to try and let it go for as long as you need to release a nice amount of brine, because that's what's going to cover, that's what's going to go as the airless environment and a nice safe ferment. Any questions so far on that particular part? Oh, it's just to wait till the questions to the end. Never mind, no questions available. Okay, so take a mason jar. You can take a, some people even do it in like the Ziploc, not Ziploc, what's the vacuum seal bags? You can use plastic if you want to. I don't recommend it, because we're creating acid here. Not acid, we're creating acids here. We're creating lactic acid. The lactic acid is going to leach whatever toxins are in the product into your ferment, okay? Never, ever, 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 never, ever, ever under any circumstances use aluminum. For this part, you can. If this was aluminum, it wouldn't matter because the acids haven't formed. It doesn't matter right now. But in the ferment, like if you're putting whatever vessel you're using, don't use aluminum. Try to avoid plastic whenever possible, but absolutely avoid aluminum. It will leach all that stuff in there. It's nasty. So I like to use mason jars. when I'm fermenting at home, when I'm fermenting, you know, to sell like giant 3-gallon, huge water seal crocks. If y'all don't own a water seal crock and you are thinking about getting into, or if you are in fermentation, you love it, you're obsessed with it, get a water seal crock. If you're new, wait, because they're glorious. Okay, so all we're gonna do with this is just pack it in the jar. It's really nice if you have like one of those little canning funnels, it works great, but you really want to like seriously crush it, like hard. Like, and I mean, unless you're like some giant He-Man, like you're not gonna be able to get it in hard enough, okay? So we're just gonna get a nice push in there, and then you wanna do it several times. I mean, we're not gonna have enough to fill up the jar because it's half of a small head of cabbage, but usually you'll have enough to fill it. About an average head of cabbage is gonna fill a quart jar. So let's just get this in there. Sorry. Hopefully that wasn't too loud. And I don't know if you guys can see, I might even get closer to you guys so you guys can really see once I get it packed in there, but you'll be able to see the brine that's kind of coming to the top. And that is really essential. You have to either create it, or it has to come from the cabbage, or you have to add it. Because if you don't, you're gonna get mold. Like, I mean, you're not gonna die, but like, you're gonna get mold and you're just gonna waste your time. So, lots of brine. Okay. So, can you guys in the front see it? How much brine is coming off? Like, all I did was exactly what I showed you 2.5 hours ago. That's all I did. So, let me go ahead, I want to make sure you guys can kind of see, like all over, you guys can see kind of the brine that's forming. You really want to make sure you have a good layer on top, just for, you know, for safety. You don't want to waste your time. Brought jalapenos, you can add caraway, you can add whatever you like to it. There's a lot of options. But bear in mind, when you are fermenting, the spices enhance in flavor. So you want to add it on, like kind of like when you're canning, you don't want to add a whole lot of spice to it because it intensifies on the shelf. Same principle. The fermentation brings out the flavor of whatever it is. So if you add too much or even a normal amount, it's going to be a lot. So this part of the process, I just realized I forgot all my lids. Oops. Oh well. We'll pretend I got lids. How about that? So then all you're going to do is you take the outer part, leaves the cabbage. I like to have 2, just to make sure that I have enough. And I like to make sure that I have at least one of these little circles cut out from the big, thick core. Because this one, it's harder, it's firmer, it's my topper. So it's gonna go on top, so it's gonna hold, it's what the weight is going to use to help hold everything under the brine, right? This one we might only need one. But ideally, this is going to be full, okay? Because once I add that stuff to this, it's going to be full. If you make your sauerkraut and there's this much airspace in there, I recommend putting it in a smaller jar because you're just going to have too much. It's too much risk. That's a lot of air for the bacteria in here to get rid of, and it's just going to struggle, and you're going to be much more prone to getting any kind of mold in there. So you just want to avoid getting any mold. Leave 1.5 inches of headspace. That's ideal. Like to right on the canning jars here, that's usually right where the shoulder is. So if you're significantly below the shoulder like we are here, just transfer it into a pint-sized jar and you're good to go. Otherwise, just get more cabbage, like we're gonna do later. So then you're gonna take the floppy pieces, right? Because we want to put it down here, and we're gonna tuck it around the sides of the cabbage. The idea behind these couple of bottom layers is it's going to catch all the little bits and pieces to hold them under the brine. Otherwise, they're going to float to the top and they're going to attract mold. So our main thing that we're worrying about in fermentation is mold. I mean, all the other things kind of, as long as you put enough salt in the jar, you eliminate the air, all that, like really all you have to worry about is mold setting it. So if we make sure everything stays under the brine, there's not going to be any mold. You don't got to worry about it. So we're just going to put a couple of layers all the way around. You're just going to kind of make sure to tuck it in, get it around the corners, and by the end of this part, it's not all going to stay under, right? So once you get the brine in there, you get the weight on top, it sinks it down. You'll have a couple floaters, just grab a spoon, scrape it off, and don't even worry about it. So you can see how kind of the top here with the nice thick spine. And once you put the weight on that I forgot over at my tent, it's gonna hold everything down, right? What time is it?
37.
You said 37? Yeah. Oh, cool. All right, so we're gonna, I really can't believe I forgot the weight, my kit at the tent, but if any of you guys are curious about it, I do have it over at my tent and I can show you. It's literally, it looks like a little glass hockey puck. You can use, you don't have to buy that if you're just getting into it, you're just getting started. Go out to your backyard, find a rock that fits inside of here, scrub it up, boil it for 20 minutes, and there's your fermentation rock. I did that for 3 years before I found the Mason Tops fermenting kit. And now I use, in my home ferments, that's pretty much what I use all the time. I'll either use a Mason Tops kit because it's just convenient, it all codes together, it works incredibly well, it's easy to clean. But there are other options too. There's airlocks. I also like those ones. It's a little bubbler, this, on top of my little sauerkraut jar. That works great as well because it's readily available. You can go to any local brew shop. They use it for beer making, they use it for all kinds of things. The principle behind all of these different kinds of lids is that it allows the CO2, the air, to be pushed out, but it doesn't allow anything back in. And that's how you know that you're gonna have a safe ferment, because once it pushes all the oxygen out, it's just replaced with CO2, which is not gonna carry mold. You don't need to worry about it. But it won't let the air back in that has mold spores in it. Does that all make sense? Cool. So the weight is fantastic to hold everything down. Like I said, you don't need it. You can get a rock. People even use the little tiny, like the little itty bitty jelly jars. If your jar is big enough and you have enough space, you can use that. Literally, you can use a Ziploc bag. You can use, can't think of anything else off the top of my head. But there's all different kinds. There's even ceramic weights that you can buy. I mean, just consult Mr. Google Pants. You'll find a ton of options on there. Amazon, lots of different creative people out there coming out with all kinds of different fermentation tools and kits and all sorts of things. First, you don't need any of them. Second, they help. You know, like if you're just getting started, don't sit there and wait for, you know, to figure out how much you can afford from Amazon. Just go out in your backyard, get a rock, a mason jar, and a lid, and you're good to go. Like that's literally all you need, but it is really helpful once you get going. Because like me, 5 minutes, like me, like I said, ADHD, there's like a herd of squirrels going on in my head. Good luck getting me to remember to burp that jar every single day. With all of these little gadgets and tools, you don't have to burp the jar every day. But if you are using a standard mason jar lid, right, about 2 days in, it's going to start, you'll start to see there's going to be bubbles that are going to form inside your jar, right? And once that bubble starts to form, you'll start to, like, you can push down on the lid, and if there's no give to it, you just come along, open it, close it real quick. Don't like sit there and leave it open. Don't do any of that. Just literally just you're releasing pressure. That's all you're doing. If you don't do that, the world's not going to end, your jar's not going to explode, it might end up on your ceiling, but it's pretty rare. Usually the only thing that happens with it is honey garlic, which that stuff's powerful. Watch that stuff, it's scary. Be careful, honey garlic is a very powerful ferment. But usually it will make the lid buckle. And if it makes the lid buckle, air's going in and out. In and out. So it's not going to be a tight seal if you let the lid buckle. And if you do forget, replace the lid, move on with your life. It's okay. Just check the top to make sure there's no mold on there, and then you're totally good to go. But just know that the pressure buildup, the bubbles that are going to form in here, especially if you're making sauerkraut, there's lots of different other things. If you guys check out my channel, you'll see like literally over 100 different videos on fermenting. There's a lot of options. But with krauts or anything you're really packing into the jar, the CO2 will cause it to rise inside of the jar. So you do have to keep an eye on it. Every once in a while, come through with a clean hand, push down on the weight, just make sure to squeeze out all the bubbles. It's gonna look like a little soda pop inside of there. It's totally normal, it's a good sign. But just keep your eye on it, and then usually, depending on how fresh your vegetables are, if you could need to do that anywhere between the 2-day mark all the way up to usually about the 10-day mark. Unless it's carrots, in which case they're the devil and they go forever. They will bubble forever. But sauerkraut, usually you're not going to see that past the 7-day mark, but every once in a while I'll go to the 10-day mark if it's really fresh, like from the garden, lots of good bacteria teeming with it. And then a couple other things, you're going to start to see the brine is going to get cloudy, right? Good sign. Fantastic sign. Don't be concerned. Don't throw it away. It's going to start to look like really cloudy. that is just the visual, like you can actually, there's so many bacteria in there, it's visible to your eye in mass amounts. That's all it is. And then after a little while, it's going to start to settle on the vegetables, settle on the bottom of the jar. Also a normal sign, bacteria die. And they are replaced with new ones, they settle. Like when they're dead, they're not moving around, they're not in the brine anymore, they just settle on the bottom. Also perfectly good normal sign. How many more minutes I got? 2 minutes, perfect. Okay, so a couple things to look out for in the end, like when you're kind of keeping an eye on it. Open the jar as little as possible, but if you do have the standard mason lid, you're gonna need to check on it every once in a while. Just make it quick, make it brief, and if it's low enough, like below the rim of your ring, and you can see, you can kind of just peek your eye in there, know everything's fine, don't open it. But if you do need to check it to make sure mold's not setting in, to make sure there's not any calm yeast in there, anything like that. So the difference between calm yeast and mold is an important distinction. Calm yeast is something that's going to form on the top. It's going to look chalky, wrinkly, almost like an oil-like sheet. Totally fine, completely harmless. Scrape it off. It'll stick right to the back of your spoon. So it'll really stick on there. It's I think it's KHAM or KHAM. I can never remember. But calm yeast, harmless, but in large quantities, it will make your food taste funky. So try and scrape it off if you see it forming. If it's generally a sign that it has too much oxygen, it has access to oxygen, there's maybe a hole in your lid, or just somehow it's gotten access to oxygen, or it's fermenting at too high of a temperature, or it happens very commonly in ferments that have high sugar levels. Fruit ferments, carrots, beets, stuff like that, it's going to be much more normal. It just means the ferment's going really fast. And then versus mold, right? It's going to be fuzzy. It's going to kind of start in little clumps, and it's going to settle on top of some kind of vegetable. It's not going to form on its own. It has to have something in the jar to attach to. So if that starts to happen, dealer's choice. Okay? If it is white, there is absolutely no harm in removing it, in my own personal opinion, and you can take your own personal opinion. But I have zero issue scraping it off if it has not overcome the whole jar. But if it is a little bit green, I will also be fine scraping it off. Any other color, game over. Instant pass. Pig food, chicken food, whatever animal du jour you have, feed it to them, and then they can feed you bacon later. You know what I'm saying? So if it's white, dealer's choice. There is absolutely no harm in removing it, but I understand if you're not comfortable with it, especially in the beginning. A little bit of green, generally fine. You know, you're not going to be any harm scraping it off. I don't recommend you sit there and like eat it, but it's usually fine to scrape off and consume what's under it. And then final thing, there will be a brown, sometimes if you don't have everything underneath the brine, the top layer will start to turn brown. It's just oxidized. It's nothing harmful. It's not mold. I just like to take off that top layer, you know, again, feed it to whatever animal I feel like, and then, you know, get everything underneath the brine, replace the brine, and move on from there. So I think I'm about out of time. So pardon? Oh, great point. I personally go for months. Most people, I recommend about 3 weeks. If you're just getting into it, you don't like the taste of sour stuff very much, but you're going for the gut healing benefits, feel free to start on the lighter side. And the more that you consume this, the more you will crave the sour flavors. I promise you it will happen. Your gut controls pretty much everything that you crave. So if you have a messed up gut, you're going to crave messed up stuff. If you have a healthy gut, you'll crave healthy food. So, I think I can answer one question, but I'm supposed to take all the questions over at my booth. But go ahead.
Do you have to use pickling salt?
No, just use anything but iodized salt. You don't want to use iodized salt because iodine is antimicrobial. That's not a good thing. But any other kind of clean, good salt, feel free to use. And if anybody has any questions, you want to check out my ferments, you want to just chit chat, whatnot, I'll just be at my booth, and then I can answer all your questions over there. So thanks for coming, you guys.